Welcome to Nurturing the Whole Child with 𝗙𝗶𝗵𝗵. 2025 is still young, and I know child care handlers, meaning parents, teachers, and caregivers, are already on the move, nurturing and taking care of children. So I hope we have a more intentional year in nurturing children and bringing the very best out of them. So in today's episode, we look at fights that we can pick with our children, whether as caregivers, whether as parents, and whether as educators. And we could also look at if it is really necessary for us to pick fights with our children. So starting from parents, parents by all means wield a lot of power over their children. We have emotional power over them. We have economic power over them, meaning financially. Our children depend on us financially. We have physical power over them. Especially if you are raising younger children, you definitely are bigger and more stronger than them. So with the kind of authority or power that parents have over children, it's very possible to frame anything that a child does as misbehavior. It could be things as simple as not sitting down quietly or sitting down quietly, being on screen for long, hanging out with friends, just anything. Because, from where you sit as a parent, you have authority and you can frame your standards of behavior and misbehavior as you deem fit. And realizing the kind of authority parents and generally adults who under whose care children are, realizing the kind of authority that we have, we need therefore to seriously think through about what fights we need to pick with our children, and if at all we actually need to pick any fight with our children. As adults, regardless of who we are in a child's life, the truth is that we have a lot of leverage in terms of we are allowed to make mistakes. We have that leverage. It's allowed for us to make mistakes, and most oftenly children will not come out to reprimand us. And it's also very important for us to realize that we need to give children that small room for them to make mistakes and for them to grow up, because children are growing up. So what I'm trying to say is that, parents, is it every fight that we need to pick with our children? Is it every time that we need to, just label a child's behavior as misbehavior, as misconduct, and run with it and, get into a full-blown conflict? And a lot of times when we are picking these fights, it's not necessarily because we are well-intentioned. Sometimes when you are shouting at your child over an issue, is it because clearly this is what you mean for them, or is it because you're working so hard for these children to conform to a certain kind of behavior that you have in mind that they should be? There is a very thin line between guiding and being in control. So it may be that you want to be in control or you want to be controlling, but it's coming out like you are well-intentioned and you're seeking the best for your child. So the most important thing for us as parents and as adults in the children's space is for us to be honest with ourselves and ask ourselves, whatever it is that I'm raising concerning a certain child, is it at the best interest of the child, or is it serving me? Am I doing this to my child? Am I scolding my child over their grades in school because I think they are performing below their potential, or because there is a certain image I have in my mind of my child and I must push it through? So clearly, what battles or what fights should we are what? Because the question here is everything big enough for us to fight over with our children, or are there things that we should let go of? This is quite an interesting topic, and especially parenting styles being as diverse as they are. But it's a discussion worth having so that we need to wake ourselves up to the fact that in as much as we have been given these children, we have been blessed with these children for us to guide through, we need to be sure that we are not just exercising control over them or just controlling them, but genuinely and lovingly guiding them as they walk through life. So what fights are worth picking? Today I'll talk about just 3 issues that I think would be important for us to pick fights over with our children, and things that I think we can actually just let go. And honestly speaking, I know as a parent, it's usually very hard to let go of anything because we are well intentioned most of the time. And you may feel like, if I let go of this, am I being a good parent? Am I being a careless parent? But you also need to ask yourself, where does it leave me with my child after I train myself to pick a fight with this little human over everything that they do in their lives? So I'll talk about 3 issues, and the first one is bad habits. So if your child is developing habits that are harmful to themselves and harmful to others, affecting their relationships with others, as a parent or as an adult in the life of that child, you can't just let that sleep. If this child is staying up very late until they cannot wake up early, maybe to go to school or to attend to the day's activities, they're not brushing their teeth, they're spending too much time on screen, they are creating messes and leaving for others to clean. I mean, those are habits that clearly as a parent you will not want your child to grow up with. So because these are habits that is first of all destructive to self. If they're spending too much time on TV, for instance, by all means, this is going to affect their health, because that is because they're not having enough time for physical activity, they're not building relationships with other children, they're not brushing their teeth, of course they will have bad breath, this is going to affect their self-esteem, they could develop cavities. So we are looking at what this habit does to the child themselves and what it does to other people around the child. So this is something that as a parent you will not let sleep. But there are other habits that may not necessarily be good, but they are not hurting anyone. I mean, you're not going to shout and make noise over your child speaking their nose, for instance. It is gross, really. It is not funny, but it's not hurting anyone. So it's not something you need to escalate and be so loud about. There are simple things that, like a child leaving their shoes untied. You don't want to cause a fuss. You need to make a fuss about the child not lacing their shoes, and build a whole mountain out of that small issue. So ideally, what I'm trying to say is that there are things really worth standing firm and working very hard as a parent or a caregiver or an adult in the life of a child to, you need to stand firm and train and build a culture. But there are other things that are not worth, because again, remember, the more fights we pick with our children, the more we also tense our relationships with them. Other than bad habits, we could look at academic issues. If your child is constantly or gradually dropping in their grades, and when we are talking about dropping in their grades, we are not talking about dropping in their grades just generally. We are talking about based on the child's potential. As parents or even as teachers, we know children's potential. We know child A has this potential, child B has this potential. So the expectations that you have on this one child may not necessarily be the same expectation that you're going to show on this other child. The amount of support a certain child requires to up their academic grades is not necessarily the same kind of support that another child requires. So when we talk about grades, it's not blanket like you should all score A's, you should all score A stars. We are talking about based on your ability, based on your potential. Are your grades gradually going down? And is this something that we need to worry about? So that is something as a parent you need to be concerned about. If your child is being disorganized to the extent that their disorganization is affecting their academic performance, they are not doing their homeworks, they are not submitting their assignments in good time, and there is no explanation for that, this is something as a parent you need to open your eyes widely and address straight at the face of your child. But there are other simple things that are also academic related. Something like a child having a messed up backpack. I mean, you don't want to make so much noise over such an issue, pouring the child's books and making so much noise, labeling the child, telling them how disorganized they are, and such kind of things. So we are saying in every aspect of a child's life, there are things that we clearly will not let them sleep, but there are others that we won't have to, give too much attention to until they destroy our relationship with these children. Number 3 is character issues. Their character traits that a child may suddenly start displaying that may require an attention of the parent, may require the attention of a parent or whoever adult is the life of this child. For instance, if a child suddenly starts lying and telling lies, and you're looking around yourself, because they say a lot of times when children begin to tell lies, it is usually because we are very judgmental over them, and so they've already learned us and they know what we want to hear, and so they want to tell us that. But there are instances when a child may just pick a vice and start running with them. So if this child suddenly starts telling lies, and that is something as a parent you would want to consider as urgent, because if you do not put checks, if you do not address such an issue, the child grows into it. There are character issues if they are left. Disrespect, for instance, if a child is constantly displaying disrespect, talking back in a disrespectful manner, is talking back on its own something bad, maybe that's a story for another day. But sometimes a child is talking back in a disrespectful way, just acting utterly disrespectful. I mean, as people, as adults in the lives of these children, we know these children. So when this character is changing suddenly and we cannot put a finger to whatever the cause is, then this is something you may need to seriously and sternly address. And the idea is not to produce a child that is in your own mind. That is not the idea. The idea is to help the child navigate the challenges of childhood and the challenges of growing up. The idea is to support. The idea is not to police them, You're not policing them for your own sake and for your own image, because these are things we do lots of time. Even as teachers, sometimes you are working so hard to put every single child in your classroom under control. Not because this is what is right for the children, but because this is what you want for yourself. So whatever we do as parents, as caregivers, and as educators, we need to ask ourselves, is it in the best interest of the child? Am I doing this because I want my child to be seen as that brilliant, nice, kind girl? Do I want my child to be seen as that sporty boy who is playing basketball and who is top on everything? Or is it a genuine and an honest attempt to mold this child to be a responsible adult? I know it's very possible, especially as parents, to panic and to worry a lot, especially when we feel like the children we are bringing up are not coming out as the best versions of themselves. But we need to put our weapons down at times, because some of these behaviors will actually fade on their own as children grow up. Because remember, as children are growing up, they're also growing up in cognition, they're also growing up emotionally, they're also growing up socially. They are learning that this is appropriate, this is inappropriate. So give that allowance for them to grow. Put your guards down a bit at times. Let go of some of these things, because the child is growing up. And another thing, it's very hard to change a person's personality. Remember, there is an aspect of personality in every child's way of conduct. So it's hard to change. And on top of that, as children grow up, some of these behaviors that you are so worried about will also go on your own. So because connection and relationships are very important, it's very important how you relate with your child. Choose the fights that you need to pick with your child and make this choice very, very wisely, because if you keep picking every fight with your child, whether you are a teacher, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're a parent, you risk ruining your relationship and your connection with this child. And you know what? It's usually very hard to influence anyone, to influence especially a child, if you do not connect with that child. So whether you are you are genuinely concerned about a child's behavior, about a child's performance, always make sure even the manner in which you pick this fight is a loving manner and is a manner that makes them know that you are not just exercising your control and authority over them, but you are genuinely concerned in helping them navigate the challenges that we have, that they encounter as they grow. I'm not saying that we need to let children grow on their own, and we are not saying that we are going to excuse misbehavior. We are saying that at times we don't even know how to help our children, go through some of the phases, some phases in life. We do not even know how to help them, correct some of the behaviors that could be a challenge and could be making us pick fights with our children. So parents, it is okay to seek help. It is okay to seek support from the family members, support from specialists like therapists and counselors, just to help us. If you genuinely are concerned, instead of constantly making noise over a child's issue, they could generally be struggling with a certain thing. So instead of picking fights all the time, it's okay to seek for help. Above everything, even as you handle this child, remember this child is an individual. Highlight their strengths instead of constantly pointing out at our children's weaknesses. We can actually highlight their strengths, because children are just like us. None of us wants to have our weaknesses constantly put on the glare. We all want to hear what we are good at, so that it helps us work on what we are struggling with. Children are no exception. They equally want to know what you are happy about them, what they did well, what impressed you about them, before you even point a finger at what you think they should work on. And generally, we are all work in progress. Your child is also a work in progress. Let's be patient. Let's lovingly nurture them to become the best versions of themselves. To everyone with a genuine interest in children, could be a parent, could be a caregiver, could be an educator, let's stay tuned. Let's subscribe, let's like and share, so that we build around ourselves a community that is supportive and nurtures the children under our care to their fullest potential. Thank you.